It's long been known that millions of years ago, one special creature walked here. These are fossilized footsteps from the dawn of mankind, the oldest footprints made by a human ancestor. For years, scientists have been convinced that whatever creature walked here would hold the key to the biggest mystery in all evolution, why it is that human beings have evolved to be so different, so unlike all other animals. Now, a new discovery may just provide the answer to that question. The trouble is, it is not what anyone had expected.
When I first saw this fossil, I realized it was going to really change your ideas of human evolution.
It is a change of such importance that the story of how man rose up from the apes and came to rule the world may now have to be rewritten. In this secret vault in Kenya, they keep human history under lock and key. Here they guard the most precious fossils in the world, the fossils that tell the story of our evolution. And there is one fossil here, more remarkable than all the others. Found just recently, it is of a human ancestor like no other.
We didn't realize how different it was until we began comparing in the museum. And that was a very exciting time because we waited such a long time to have the specimen prepared. And then when we got to study it and we kept taking something else out of the cupboard and comparing it, it was different, and this was different, and that was different.
Maeve Leakey and her team spent a whole year painstakingly assembling their discovery from just tiny fragments. And as they analyzed it further, the more baffled they became. This fossil didn't fit into any known pattern of human evolution.
We just simply couldn't find something that looked really similar. Quite quickly we began to realize we had something very, very different. And then of course it was a matter of saying, well, okay, to have something different, but which group does it fit in? It must fit with something that's already known. And then it didn't seem to work that way either. And so in the end we realized that we did have something that was unknown, it was new.
They had put together a skull, the oldest skull ever found of a human ancestor. When word of this discovery spread, science was faced with something stunning. Because this fossil should not exist. Because of it, a mystery that many in science thought had been solved will have to be reopened. For this skull says that a key part of the theory of how human beings evolved from apes and came to dominate the planet has all been based on a mistake. The big mystery of human evolution began 10 million years ago, when the Earth was a very different place, far more lush and tropical than it is today. Back then, one kind of creature reigned supreme: the apes. They were everywhere. The Earth really was the planet of the apes. These were apes like we can barely imagine. There were 50 different species of them, and they roamed right across the planet. There was the huge Sevapithecus in the jungles of the east. It was twice the weight of a man. There was tiny Limnopithecus that lurked high in the forest canopy, eating fruit no other creature could reach. This world was an ape's paradise.
For the apes, Living some 10 million years ago, it was really a great time because we had an enormous variety of different types of apes. Those living more in the trees, those living more on the ground. There were very big apes and there were smaller apes. And it must have been really an exciting time.
Apes were the most intelligent animals alive at the time. They may even have used sticks and stones as tools to get food. But then the fossil record shows the planet of the apes just stops.
All this enormous variety of different types of apes disappeared about some 7-8 million years ago, and we really cannot find an exact explication why this happened.
7 million years later, there are just a few survivors from the planet of the apes, like the orangutan, the gorilla and the chimpanzee. And in place of all those apes is an animal clearly related to them, but which could not be more different: human beings. No other creature has ever thought like us, built like us, dreamed like us. We are more intelligent than any other animal there has ever been. We alone can aspire to understand the deepest mysteries of the universe. We alone can hope to control nature itself. We are light years ahead of anything that has ever lived before.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
This gulf between us and all other creatures is so huge that long ago it convinced scientists that we must have been produced by an evolutionary process that was different from all other animals. In some way, we had been chosen. But what had made us evolve into something so unique? What evolutionary development had allowed us to become so vastly more intelligent than all other animals? That was the great question the disciples of Charles Darwin, evolution's founding father, were left with. The answer, early anthropologists thought, would lie out there in the rocks. Somewhere there would be a fossil that could explain it all. It would be a fossil of an animal that was basically an ape, but which showed the first key human characteristic to have evolved. It was believed that that first key characteristic would prove to be the thing that had made us so superior to all other animals. And of all the evolutionary changes between humans and apes, one dwarfs them all. Our brains have grown to an extraordinary size, and this bewitched early anthropologists.
Humans have very large brains, and our cranial capacity is about 1,400 cubic centimeters. And this contrasts to the chimpanzees that are around 400 cubic centimeters. So humans are 3 times the size of a chimpanzee brain.
And so, over 100 years ago, the big brain theory of human evolution was born. It seemed obvious that our special evolutionary process must have begun with the development of our superior intelligence. According to the theory, in the last 7 million years, an ape must have evolved to have a slightly bigger brain. This more intelligent ape would have given birth to a line of progressively bigger-brained super apes, who ultimately turned into humans.
When we're looking at human evolution, what we have to realize is that we define ourselves by our big brain and by everything that results from that big brain. And for many years, paleoanthropologists have felt that that was what we're looking for, that the most important period in human evolution is when we see that big brain, that somehow this defines our species.
The big brain theory dominated early anthropology. All they needed was the fossil to prove it. It turned the quest to find the fossil with the first key human characteristic into the quest for the fossil of an ape-like animal with a big brain. The only question was, how would they know when they had found it? How big would its brain have to be to make it our ancestor? One man who thought he knew the answer was one of anthropology's legends, Louis Leakey. Leakey set what he called a cerebral Rubicon. By pouring beads into a skull's brain cavity and then measuring the volume of the beads, it is possible to estimate brain size. Leakey said the fossil they were looking for would have a brain bigger than that of any known ape, but about half that of a human's, measured in cubic centimeters.
Anthropologists were trying to define what the first human would be like, and they set a value for brain size that was outside the range of any known ape. And they settled on a figure of about 600 to 700 cubic centimeters.
Leakey looked in Africa for 50 years. He found bones of ancient apes. He even found a skull, but its brain was below the 600 cubic centimeters needed for it to be the elusive ape with the big brain, the ape that had set us out on our unique evolutionary path. But all the while he knew it had to be out there in Africa, somewhere, just waiting for him to find it. By the 1970s, Louis Leakey was an old man with failing health. It was time for someone else to take up the quest. The call was answered by Louis's son, Richard, and his wife, Maeve. They sent teams scouring the rocks of Kenya, looking for the elusive fossil of the ape with the big brain. That key characteristic that scientists believe triggered the amazing evolution of human beings. Then, after searching for 4 years, they saw something peeping out from the rocks.
It was just a few fragments sitting on the surface that really didn't look like anything. And in fact, the field crew had noticed it and looked at it and thought that it was bits of an antelope.
This bit of an antelope was dated at around 2.8 million years old, halfway between the present day and the end of the planet of the apes, the perfect age for the key development that had separated humans from apes to have happened. And there was something about this fossil that intrigued Richard Leakey. And so he began trying to put the pieces together.
After about a week of Richard not doing a very good job, I have to say, they got bored with it and said, OK, you have a go.
It was a task that Maeve Leakey had never attempted before.
And so over the next few weeks, I had a wonderful time trying to stick all these pieces together. And I think it was definitely one of the most challenging and exciting jigsaw puzzles I've ever done. And it gradually came together.
It was not the skull of an antelope, but of an ape-like creature. And it seemed to have an unusually large brain. The question was, did it cross the magical cerebral Rubicon, 600 cubic centimeters?
They couldn't wait to get it back to Nairobi and to do it properly. So they decided to fudge it in camp, but using whatever they had, and they didn't have very much. So what they did was they filled the cranium with sand, and then they poured the sand into a rain gauge, and they measured the amount of sand that filled the cranial vault. And it came to 8 inches of rain, which they estimated was to be about 800 cc, which is pretty close. I think now it's 785 or something like that.
Richard Leakey believed he had done it. He thought he had found the fossil his father had been looking for. So there was one person he just had to tell.
Richard said, well, I really want to take it to Nairobi because I want to show my father. And so he flew back to Nairobi with it to show Louis. Louis was very excited when he saw the specimen. And it was a great moment, I think, for both of them.
2 weeks later, Louis Leakey died.